Right, a rapid learning chunk on how to ask questions. In this module, we'll cover off why we ask questions, the most important question types, how we will ask the questions, and powerful questions. Why do we ask questions? To maintain control of the conversation, just to bring it back under your control. Ask a question. Express an interest in the person, to clarify a point. Exploring deeper on a problem or difficulty. Testing of knowledge, to encourage further thought. Just curiosity, just wanting to know. May not even be relevant, but just asking a question. And for information. Open questions are such a powerful way of finding out the other person's opinion. You know, asking how, who, what, when, where, describe, explain, in what way. Could you tell me about? How did you apply your training to your work? Big advantage, it encourages the person to do most of the talking, may turn up unexpected areas to pursue. It allows the person to talk about topics in their own words. It's good for exploring opinions, attitudes, and feelings. The disadvantages are it can be quite difficult to think of the question, to phrase it in a simple way without getting too involved. And it could also leave the person feeling a bit vulnerable and unsure of what is expected of them, particularly if it's a fairly senior person dealing with a junior person. They may feel a little bit strong. Closed questions. Do, did, can, is, are, have, will. How long did you work there? It's questions that have a very short answer. The advantages are, can be used to good effect to obtain or check specific, concise information. Useful when you want to gain quick confirmation of basic facts, can be used to regain control from a talkative person, are useful for clarifying a vague response, can be used to direct the interview to specific areas or to introduce a more open question. Disadvantages are too many closed questions can seem like an interrogation. It can disadvantage shy or nervous people by not encouraging them to expand. And it's not appropriate if you are trying to get the person to talk in some depth about their experience or attitudes. So very specific question. And particularly when you're starting off any conversation, but particularly a coaching conversation, hold back on the closed questions. It's the open questions you want. Probing questions. How, who, what, when, why, where, describe, explain, in what way. This is where you're really trying to sort of home in on what somebody said. Particularly useful for encouraging people to concentrate on specific points, for clarifying uncertainties, testing the validity of a more general response and seeking evidence. And it's very, very useful there. When we get on to at a later stage talking about the coaching funnel, you'll see how important probing questions are. Disadvantages are, if overused, can leave the person unsure of the expected answer or feeling that they must have given an incorrect response. And sometimes the probing is followed up with your own sort of language. You're starting to get excited or involved, and you really want to get an answer, and sometimes you need to actually learn how to manage your own emotions on this. Finally, sort of a hypothetical question, quite useful if you're training or coaching somebody. So for example, suppose we went ahead with this plan of action and it failed. How would you handle the situation? So useful for checking theoretical knowledge, good for examining a person's response to a situation, where they would not have had the experience but may have the knowledge of how to deal with it. So if you want them to show how they would adapt and expand or apply what they know. Disadvantages, you don't reveal much of the person's actual experience. You need to be carefully, needs to be carefully phrased to avoid confusing the person, and should be avoided if it involves a lot of explaining of background information before the person can reply. Sometimes you get textbook answers, and there can be a little correlation between what people say they would do and what they actually do in a given situation. But it can have its uses. How we ask the questions, be structured in your approach, think it through, start with open questions, get as much information, then ask questions along the way to clarify. Use silence, the power of silence. I think sometimes when we are confronted with silence, we feel we need to fill it with another question or partially answering it ourselves. Silence is a great way of drawing information out of people. So use silence and encourage participation through whatever means, the environment, just your body language, drawing it out of the other person. That's how you go about asking the questions. What you can build up over time is a bank of powerful questions that you can ask. Questions that actually make people think things through in a different way, and questions that will draw out a lot of information from people. There's a list, and you'll be sent a list of powerful questions. But the recommendation is try these questions, see how they work out, and from time to time add questions that you've come up with yourself that help people to sort of almost think about things in a completely different way, to sort of focus them in a way that they would never have thought of. So really, really good. Build up your bank of questions and just keep trying and find the ones that really work. To summarize, asking the right questions is a vital part of being an EI leader. Picking up on the emotional cues that you receive, asking the right question that gets people to sort of drill down, it's such an important part. Before you meet up with somebody, before you plan a coaching session, be sure to structure well in order to establish a quality flow of information. You want to open up the flow of information and keep it coming to you. Select the right types of question, and then over time build up a reserve of powerful questions, questions have worked and actually help people to sort of think about things in a slightly different way. Practice and get better. And that's the end of this module.